I'll open up. Well, that's what I got it. I'm not going to open up Instagram yet because I got to get these questions. You know what I'll do is I'm just going to email myself the picture and then we'll read them off there. Okay, now I should be able to. Okay, now you should be able to open up your Instagram and you should have just got invited. You got to turn the volume down all the way. You might have to, I don't know if you can hit mute or then it might mute your voice, but you just have to turn the ringer down all the way. And I'll get on.
I think that should be okay.
All right, if somebody's in the live stream, can you do me a favor and give me a thumbs up just to make sure you can see us? Everything's going good. Everybody on Instagram, if you want to watch over on YouTube, just go to my channel, go to my stories, and the most recent story has a link. This, pull this in front of that. Too easy. I'm so thirsty lately, man. It's out of control. And I'm not a guy. I was bulky
today.
No, day off. Just did cardio. I actually bought a recumbent bike and it sits over in the corner of my office, so I don't have an excuse on days off. Did you freeze on Zoom? No, you're back now.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeremy, for letting us know everything is good to go. Let me open up this picture. So what else has been going on, man? When are you going out for bear?
The first full weekend of May for sure. I might get up there in the next week or two just to make sure. I bet you my trail cam batteries are dead. They've been up all winter. So get some fresh batteries in there, see what I've got on the camera, and then definitely get back up there for hunting though first full weekend of May.
Nice.
Yeah. What about you? What are your plans for spring bear?
I don't know, man. Part of me wants to skip it because I want to focus on the competition and I don't want to get distracted. And then part of me, especially because I just got the new bow, I really want to go shoot something with it. Yeah. So I really want to go. And then both, my buddy Tristan invited me out for a weekend hunt. He's got some pretty good spots. And then Lander said I could come up for a few days as well. So I don't know, man. I'm going to play it by ear, I guess. Maybe. Yeah. I'd like to get out, but I think I'm going to have to feel pretty comfortable with the way everything is going, or I'll feel irresponsible.
For sure.
Yeah. So I don't know. And then if that doesn't happen, the other thing is, like, I'm going away for 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of August for my sheep hunt. And normally, because I don't have a hunt until like the middle of September, I really feel the pressure to get out in like May, June. But I think because the sheep hunt is like right around the corner, it's actually like, it wouldn't be the worst thing. Like, it's definitely not my favorite. Like, I like to hunt bears. I would rather be hunting bears than not hunting bears. But also because the sheep hunt is right around the corner, it's an easier pill to swallow. You know what I mean? That I might not get out after bears. Why don't you give everybody an update? Like, you do a completely different training system than me, and everybody's probably sick and tired of hearing about my prep. Give us a quick breakdown on the methodology that you're applying, what your goals are, and where you're at in your progress right now.
So my goals are pretty much just strength-based at the moment. Right now I'm running basically a Texas method template. So every Friday I'm setting a new PR for squat, bench, and deadlift. Basically right now where I'm at, like, you start the program essentially with a PR set of 5, and then you would go up 5 pounds every week, by just one set of 5. That's your PR day. Monday you do a volume day, 5x5 for each one of those lifts. Takes forever, with like 80 to 90% of what you did on Friday. Then Wednesday is just an active recovery day. Basically that's the light day, just front squats and overhead press. But yeah, you drive your strength.
But you're only like really lifting 2 days.
3 days. I mean, like the light day, it's a light day relatively, right? Like my overhead press is going to be light relative to my bench press. My front squat is going to be light relative to my back squat, but I'm still going pretty heavy. That was one thing I had to kind of dial in at the beginning of this program. Like, I basically started taking the absolute max that I could front squat for a set of 3 and doing 2 sets of 3 with that weight on my light day. And there was no recovery then, right? So by Friday, I'm burnt out from doing my volume on Monday, then doing heavy front squats and heavy overhead press on Wednesday. And then I'm trying to max out on Friday. So I had to tone down a little bit what I was doing on Wednesday. So, I mean, I'm still lifting for sure on Wednesday. It's still heavy, but it's not a maximal load, right? Whereas Monday, it's only 85% or whatever of my max set of 5. But by that 5th set, I'm grinding them out. So yeah, but only 3 days a week. I mean, with the intensity that I'm doing, I don't think I can get away with a lot more. I've tried doing a couple accessory days here and there, you just a little bit of accessory work on an extra day. And yeah, I need to eat like crazy and sleep as much as possible just to keep up with the recovery demands of those 3 days.
Well, and the fact that you're doing the same exercises, like, I can't imagine doing a chest day, taking a day off and going back in and doing a chest day.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is kind of,
it's very repetitive, but the repetition, I mean, it's like shooting a bow, right? That's something I've had to kind of think about. Like, when I shoot my bow, I'm trying to make every shot identical, right? So it's the same with a bench press rep, same with a squat, right? Everyone should be as identical as you can get it, right?
They're also compound movements. So my analogy doesn't hold particularly true because they're compound movements. When you're doing things like several exercise to exhaust one particular muscle group, then doing that muscle group again in a day or two is a waste of time. But
also mixing up the exercises, whenever I do something different, I don't necessarily have to put the intensity into it, but just the fact that it's like, oh man, I really feel that, whereas I'm so used to bench press, I can do heavy bench press on Friday and I don't necessarily feel it all that much the next day. I feel that I worked in my
Your Zoom froze again. What we might do is see if it pops back here. If it happens again, maybe we'll kill if this happens one more time, maybe we'll just kill the Instagram feed and then because it's probably sucking too much of your internet.
Yeah, it could be.
Okay. Shoe Swap wants to know how much cardio you're doing.
None. 0.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I need to get back on my backpack cardio stuff, like just back on. Actually, I need to refit my pack because I've gained like 30 pounds since the last. Well, I guess I wore it when I was out muley hunting, but I mean that was a brief excursion, right?
Yeah.
Bagged out on day one.
That's pretty brief.
Yeah.
Okay, so round this out for us. How long have you been doing this program? Give us some numbers where you were started and give us some numbers where you're at now.
This program, I started this one probably, I started the Texas Method template in January, but I started a straight up linear progression back in July, kind of just getting back into things. I had a pretty bad car accident a couple of years ago, so I took a pretty significant time off from the gym. So I wanted to get my strength back up and stuff. So I started, I believe my squat, I started around 225 for sets of 5. Bench was maybe like 205, 210 or something for sets of 5. Deadlift, maybe 275. And the deadlift has been the slowest to progress because the injury in my accident was my lower back. So I've had issues with keeping my low back in extension. For whatever reason, I don't have that issue with squats. I guess because I'm already tight starting from the top, descending, whereas the deadlift, I'm having to get tight and maintain that.
Dude,
tight.
Anything bent over is like a landmine for me. Like, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So I've got to the point now where it's just like, I'm 43 and I don't need to do any more bent over non-chest supported shit, because it just like every single time, might be 3 months, might be 6 months, it happens. And I'm out for 2 weeks because I popped something. Like, I'm just not built for it. Yeah. And here's the thing. That's kind of a cop out. I'm sure if I did some accessory work and really worked on some stuff, but I would like, the level of effort I've got to put in to get something back out that I'm not really that interested in getting back out. I'm just like, we'll leave that group of exercises over there for now. So it is definitely a different set of muscles for sure. And you're utilizing them in a different way.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, this week I'm going to hit 300 on the bench. I got to do 5 singles. Squat 375 for triples, deadlift 375 for sets of 5. So that's like whatever, 410, 415 for a single. The deadlift has been the slowest though to progress for sure. Everything else has been pretty steady.
Sorry, so bench was 300.
Yeah.
Deadlift was 410.
Yeah, for a single approximately. I haven't tested my single on.
Sure. And what was the squat? I gapped out.
375 for triples. So
okay.
390 or something, 395 for a single.
I mean, you're getting like, not that that's not respectable right now, but I've always thought like a 3-plate bench press and a 4-plate squat and a 4-plate deadlift is kind of like my benchmark for like man lifts. Do you know what I mean? That takes you into probably the top 1%, to be honest.
At a typical gym
of the public, of general public, you know what I mean? Like, once you get into that 1%, there's 99% of those people are still up above us. Do you know what I mean? But that you're in some pretty, it doesn't feel like it, but you're in some pretty elite company.
Getting there at least.
Yeah.
Stronger than I was last week, and that's always my main goal. There's always going to be guys that are stronger than me, but if I'm stronger than I was last week, I'm happy,
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome, man. Well, good on you.
I'll be happy when I hit the 500-pound squat, though. I'm more excited for that than I am a 315 bench.
Yeah, you know what? I never even wanted to do a 500-pound squat. That's funny. What's 5 plates?
495.
Okay, so basically, you chuck on a couple chuck on a couple nickels, take it up to 510 or 505. And you got yourself a 500-pound squat. I never got quite up to a 4-plate squat. I got like, I think 3 1/4, 3 1/4, and a 10.
Okay.
Was the closest I ever got. And I think that was for a triple.
Yeah.
And that was a little while ago now. And now for legs, I mostly stick to the machine stuff. So I don't really get a chance to see how far I could push myself there. But now, do you plan on, how long are you going to run this period? And as we get closer to some hunting, are you thinking about that? Like, are you thinking I need to start working some other shit in so I'm not just this big blocky mess trying to make my way through the timber?
I'm not too concerned about like
Cardio.
I was talking about this the other day with somebody. Like, if my cardio sucks going into the mountains, my hunting just sucks more. But I'm still pretty much as capable.
Right.
Whereas if I go into the mountains and my strength is lacking, like, there's shit that I'm incapable of. You know,
Right.
It doesn't matter how much I want to get this bear up on my back. You know, I'm not going to be able to do that if I haven't been doing my squats and my deadlifts, right? Whereas I'll huff and puff my way up the mountain if I've been slacking on my cardio. You know, I might move a little bit slower, you know, granted, but I mean, I'm still generally as capable. You know, it just sucks a lot more.
The only part I'm going to argue with that in, and I'm not going to make it personal to you, but I will say that the vast majority of people will talk themselves out of the right decisions if they don't have, if their cardio is not up to a place where it's like relatively reasonable for them to like go over the next hill or get up and be like, there's probably nothing over there anyways. That's my only, because I will say, go like, and then like the bigger you get and the more that muscle mass starts to outweigh your cardiovascular capacity, because it's all like it's an exponential ratio disparation. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not even, you're almost better off being a fat guy, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
The muscular guy requires more oxygen and glycogen and fuel across the board to move his body around than the fat guy does. And so that would be my only caveat to that whole thing. And if you can summon the mental toughness, then it's not an issue. It's just, you just gotta, I just found it very frustrating because I'm like, this is not how I operate out here. I operate like far more energetically, you know. Also, you're not 270 pounds. So my situation was like a blown out example. And I've always thought when I was in relatively decent shape, as long as I kicked the cardio into high gear about a month before a big hunt, because you're younger than I am too. It wasn't until I hit my 40s that I'm like, oh shit, I can't get ready for a hunt in a month anymore. But in my 30s, it wasn't a problem, man.
That's essentially, that's my mindset right now, you know. I know I'm not going to be doing any intense mountain stuff for spring bear, so I don't really care if I'm extra fluffy. You know, I'm assuming I'll probably end up stalling out on this program, you know, around June. So, I mean, I'll
it's almost going to time out perfectly, just naturally.
Probably shred down a little bit and get my car. Yeah, right now I'm having to eat a lot, and the weight is kind of, I don't know, I stalled out at about 200 for probably like 3-4 weeks, but I got into the liverwurst actually a couple of weeks ago. You into that?
I haven't eaten a lot of it, no.
I used to eat that one all the time when I was a kid. I forgot about that, but that's performance enhancing liverwurst right there, man.
I mean, that's a way to put on some pounds, bro. That's just straight up like organ and fat.
Liverwurst and Triscuits.
Oh yeah, that's my kind of party, dude. I am so, holy shit, man. I'm so sick and tired of. You know what? I'm gonna stop myself right there. I'm into it. I'm at a place where I'm okay with it. I will find the monotony of it is challenging, but I told myself I wasn't going to complain this whole prep because I hate people who volunteer for something and then just fucking whine about it. Like, it drives me insane. It's like, you're just trying to create a situation to give yourself something to fucking complain about. I will say though, that if we were going to talk about the challenges, eating like the same stuff, and it's going on, I'm over 8 weeks now without a meal off plan.
Okay.
Like, I haven't had no cheat meal, no nothing, no cookie, no chip, no nothing. Like, the only thing I eat is just a different combination of eggs, rice, potatoes, chicken, venison, steak, bear, and a couple different carb sources. I do have cream of rice, and I've been having a couple slices of toast sometimes with my breakfast instead of my cream of rice. but it's something else, man. Your body starts operating like the weight is just kind of like this week I was down 30 pounds from when I started in January.
That's wild.
Yeah, it is. And I've got at least another 30 to go. And I think the next 30 is going to be the fun 30 because it's going to be like shit's going to start to get freaky.
Yeah. That's when things are really going to take shape.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, let's answer some of these questions. Samuel wants to know, how is the border coming north? It was a joke. It was phenomenal. So I do have a Nexus card, and I think sometimes that helps out a little bit. On the way down, Buddy was like a little inquisitive. He's like, where are you going? I'm like, Oregon. He's like, what for? I'm like, to buy a bow. And he said, what? I'm like, yeah, a compound bow, like a hunting bow. And he's like, you're driving all the way to Oregon for that? And I'm like, yeah, there's this shop there. I want to go buy a bow. And then he asked me a couple questions about work. And then he's basically like, all right, have a good day. And I just went through. And there wasn't a single person in line. I literally like drove up to the border, answered 7 or 8 questions, and left the border. Like nothing happened. And then on the way back, he just asked, it was even better. I crossed the border at like 9:30 at night. There was one person in front of me. And I pulled up to the thing. He's like, do you have anything to declare? I said, nope. And he said, have a good night. And I just drove right on through. So yeah, man, I guess apparently you can still get selected for random testing, apparently, but it didn't happen to me on either of my trips. So yeah, man, it was badass. Up next, Brandon Ring asks, hide/cape care while out in the field. Best practices to preserve for a taxidermist. So I'm going to make 2 notes on this before throwing it over to Simon. Note number 1, I talked to Ray Weens today, who's my taxidermist, and he's agreed to come on the podcast. And he said, what we're going to do is I'll throw up a Q&A later this week, and everybody can pop in their taxidermy related questions. And then I'm going to send that to him in advance, so he has a little time to think on it. And then I'll have him on the podcast, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. And we'll get like super deep into taxidermy prep. The other thing that he said, the tip he wanted to give people going into bear season is practice on your bear. Even if you're not going to do a full mount, if you're planning on doing full mounts at some point in the future, like you're going sheep hunting this summer or goat hunting, he's like, take the time and cape your bear out like you were going to keep the cape. And that way you're getting like this free experience. And then if you screw it up, who cares? But he said it was a really good opportunity to get comfortable caping. He said, some people have never caped an animal before they go to cape a sheep or something, and they just have no experience. So I thought that was a really good tip.
I've actually done that.
Like for practice.
Yeah, I did. Well, I did that with my second bear because all I had got out, I quartered them up. I threw them in my backpack. I had all my gear in there. The backpack was it ended up being 130 pounds. So that was without the hide or anything. That was just with the head, the meat, my gear, and my kid even packed some out too, right? So now when I just cut off the head out off of what would have been the rug, right, and 2 paws, and took that with me. I made the claws. I got one of the claws on a necklace here. I did some stuff with the claws, and then I skinned out the head. Just like practice, right? Just in case I ever up in the top, with a sheep or something like plan with experience. Skinning it out because I figured out just like practice, right? Just in case, let me have a little bit of experience. My first time, it was fine.
Let's shut off Instagram. Stuff, so. You're cutting out again.
Okay. Gotcha.
Anybody on Instagram, if you want to watch, go to the link in my story. We're up on YouTube. I'd rather have the good quality for the recording. All right.
All right. I'm out of there.
Shut that. Yeah. Okay. So you have also had a couple bears rugged, or is it just one rug?
One rug, and then another one I skinned out like I was gonna do a rug, but I didn't want to rug it. It was just like really fluffy. I figured I would just soft tan it, and then I talked to the taxidermist. Actually, what I was gonna do is just soft tan it and then roll it up and put it on a Trapper Nelson.
Yeah.
And then I talked to the taxidermist, and his rate to mount the head and stuff and have it, like it was a dead packed out bear cape, right? His rate was very reasonable, so I said I go for it. So I got that one just over there.
So it looks like it's a packed out bear.
Exactly, yeah, just like the cape rolled up on the Trapper Nelson.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's cool. I should think about, because I've kind of, what I'm switching to now is just the soft hands. And what I'm going to do is just put some pegs down here. And like, I love that when there's just like 5 or 6 of them all lined up in a row. So I think that's what I'm going to do. If one of them had a real nice noggin on him though, I'm just sick of rugging like average bears. Like I've got 2 like 5'10", kind of 6 foot bears that when you first get a bear, you're like, holy shit, this thing's amazing. I want a rug. But then after sitting with it, it's like this, I didn't need to get this rug. Like in my opinion, in British Columbia, like 7 foot and up, unless it's your first bear because you want to commemorate something and maybe you'll never go bear hunting again. But for me, I'm not rugging anything else that's sub 7 foot. Like it's got to be a big bear.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect option because there's lots of bears. Like a lot of guys will say, like, that 7 foot reference.
Yeah.
And to me, that doesn't mean a lot because the bears are measured not by their length, it's by the size of their skull, right?
Correct.
And there's plenty of bears, huge noggins, and they're 5'6", 5'8", under 6 feet. There's where I hunt particularly, there's just genetics for short bears with huge noggins,
Right.
So I mean, I'm not a tall bear hunter, but that's a good mount for a bear that's not necessarily a tall bear, but he's got a big head on him, especially if they're super lucky, because when you roll that up, it's a pretty big bundle. It's not a small chunk of fur.
No, I think. Sorry, somebody just threw in a question. I'll try. If you see me when I post up that Q&A shoe swap, try and remember to stick that question in there again, and I'll send it to him. If not, I'll try and remember. I just don't have the best memory some days. But that wouldn't surprise me because when I was going goat hunting, I didn't really plan on doing a full mount, but I'd heard that goat capes were quite, what's the word I'm looking for? Valuable. And so I hit him up beforehand and he was willing to buy a goat cape off of me. I forget what he said. I think it was like, I'd heard slightly higher numbers elsewhere, and he was honest. He's like, if you want to put this out on the open market, you can probably get more. But the nice thing about dealing with Ray is like, you didn't have to deal with any bullshit. Like you could just drop it off and he'll just give you cash. So I want to say maybe he said $800, but I don't want to put words in his mouth because I don't honestly remember what he said he would give me. But it wouldn't surprise me if you'd get some credit for deer capes. He's busy and he's doing lots of mounts. And I think his stuff is among the best in the province. I don't know if I feel comfortable saying anyone was particularly the best, but like Ray's shit is nice. Both his bears he's done for me have been phenomenal. So any other tips you've come across? Do you leave the paws in? I leave the paws and the skull in because
I normally leave the paws in. I've skinned skulls. Realistically, it's a little bit more intimidating, I think, than it really is. It's not rocket science. The one thing that I didn't really mess it up on mine, but I could have done a better job, I guess, is cutting the ears like farther down on the head. Like if you watch a couple of videos of skinning out like a bear's head, it's a little bit farther back, I guess, that I actually cut it off. It's not a big deal. You can't even see, with the inside. But he was saying, I guess, if you were going to mount it and do a full mount, it would be better to have, more of the fur on the inside of the ear. But I mean, other than that, that's the thing is if you're going to be back in town in a day or two, it's not a big deal to leave the head and the paws in, throw it in the freezer as soon as you get home. I've left stuff in the freezer for over a year and taken it to the taxidermist. No issues. Just don't salt it and then freeze it.
Yes.
One or the other. Either
Yes.
salt or free.
Yes. Yes. Great call. And here's the thing. Most of the guys are going to charge you their $75 or $100 cleaning fee one way or the other.
Yeah,
because we're not good enough to get it crystal clean. So you might as well, if you're going to pay that extra fee anyways, you might as well have them do the really finicky shit. And Ray told me that. He's like, listen, man, I'm going to charge you that $75 or whatever it is probably anyways. So you might as well just leave the paws and skull in and I'll take it out.
And at the end of the day, with a bear rug, $75 is nothing. So
no, because you're probably in for $2,000.
Yeah.
And I usually leave my skull with him anyways. It costs the same for him because he's either going to take it to black. What is it? It's a tannery. Black powder. And they're gonna chem it. Or if you want to, I think the beetles are like an extra $50.
So this is one thing I've always done my own skulls. I macerate them. I throw them in a bucket with water, and then I just change the water every week. I put an aquarium heater in there. It stinks to high heaven, but I mean, it gets them nice and clean like beetles would. It keeps that nasal cavity, because I mean, if you pressure wash them like that White Bone Creations guy, it's nice and quick. It's done in a day or whatever, but I mean, you lose the turbinates and everything, which is really cool on bears. You know, like deer, they're cool. Sheep, they're cool, but with bears, they're just amazing. When you look in a bear's nasal cavity, it's like, oh, that's why they wind you a kilometer away, right? So
I didn't even think about that. I've done my own Euros, and I actually followed the White Bone Creations method before. I've done it.
Yeah, it makes a nice product.
Like
I just think either beetling or maceration, it just gives it that extra touch with the turbinates,
Sure.
Yeah. And then another trick I do with my Euro mounts with bears is I put polyurethane on the teeth before I whiten it, because a lot of the time bears will have crazy discoloration on their teeth, right? So before I throw it in the peroxide, because the peroxide is going to whiten everything, teeth and all. So before I do throw it in the peroxide, I'll paint the teeth with polyurethane, let it dry, and then it doesn't whiten the teeth. You preserve that coloration, and also you get that like shine on it, because when you see a bear, it's got saliva on its teeth. You never see it. Bear with saliva. But with that polyurethane, it gives it that same look. That's nice.
A great idea. Now, do you seal your skulls? Because that White Bone Creation guys, excuse me, says to use Mop and Glow, which I thought was always a great idea, but I've never actually tried it.
Yeah, I tried to order some a while ago, and it was like $70 on Amazon. So I said, forget it.
Isn't that weird how some shit is just crazy expensive?
$120 for a pair of undies. It's random like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've thought about doing, like, some guys will use like Elmer's with water, just the white glue with water.
Yep.
I've never sealed or anything. I'll use some white, like to prop the mouth open, to do that open jaw. But that's it. I don't seal them or anything.
No, me neither. And I don't mind if they start looking a little bit older. I think it's kind of cool. Yeah. All right. Zach wants to know if I ever laid eyes on an elk on Haida Gwaii. Well, embarrassing as it is, having worked on Haida Gwaii for more than 3 years and having gone on 3 elk hunts on Haida Gwaii, the only elk I've ever seen on the hoof on Haida Gwaii in person is a cow elk for like 10 seconds. All that time, man. I've got him on camera. I've heard lots of stories. I know lots of other people who've seen them. I've never even heard one bugle, to be honest with you. That island kicked my ass when it comes to elk. Have you ever been elk hunting on any of the islands?
No.
I've
never been elk hunting at all.
Do you put in for elk on the island?
Yeah. I put in for I think 1 or 2 the last year or the last 2 years. I put in over there. I never get anything, so
they're pretty hard to. They're not impossible to pull. Like if you put in for those, I think you should get it. Yeah, the archery only, and you put in for like the Nooka or the Cowichan, like one of these ones where you're like, your odds of getting an elk are pretty damn good. I think you should be able to pull that like every 6 to 8 years, maybe 10. I don't know for sure, but they're not impossible, but they're not gimme tags by any stretch.
Yeah.
I put it in for it every year. But I'm going on 7 years entering draws in British Columbia, and I've never pulled anything.
I got my first draw of my hunting career this year for a muley doe, and then I shot that muley buck on day one. So this is the first year I shot a buck, and of course it's the year I got a doe tag.
You're also not a rifle hunter, so I think that muley doe isn't the like prize or the like little bonus that it is for most people, because it's like it's pretty easy with a rifle to go find a muley doe someplace. But even with a bow, man, that's still hard.
Yeah. To be honest, once I got it in my pocket too, I was honestly thinking about just eating it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless I knew there were particularly high populations somewhere that could like really support that, I'm also not. Well, I shot that white-tailed doe this year, and it's very good eating. So that's the other benefit of the doe, is that it's really nice meat.
Okay.
All right.
Was in December?
That was in December.
Okay, right. Yeah.
Yeah, with the bow, late season, out in the Okanagan, Rock Creek way.
Yeah.
All right, well, I will answer this next one, seeing as you have admitted to no elk hunting experiences. What call sequences / sounds are good for locating elk? So I am not an elk hunting savant by any stretch of the imagination, but I've done my fair share of bugling. And essentially you have a couple major calls in elk calling. And I would say the two major male calls are location bugles and challenge bugles. And if you're gonna learn to do anything, I would get a diaphragm. You want to learn to location bugle, challenge bugle, and mew like a cow mew. It's like a and it's kind of like just what the cows do when they're talking to each other. You want to be able to be a cow and a bull. But for a bull, and a location bugle is easier to do than a challenge bugle, because the location bugle is essentially just working your way up the octaves until you get to the highest note you can hit, and then just holding it for a long, extended period of time. And the idea is you're trying to get it to cover as much ground as possible. And the goal is that they will hear that and they will call back to you. Real quick primer on archery elk hunting. You just walk, location bugle. Listen. Walk, location bugle. Listen until you hear a reply. And then once you hear a reply, then different strategies kind of kick in. But if you could only, I would even say, even for rifle hunters, like if you're going to only learn how to do one thing, I would say it's location bugle, because that's going to let you know that there's elk in the area. Now, I'm a fan of mouth diaphragms. I don't like bite and blows and like bullshit like that. I think you should take the time and learn how to actually use a reed. But some people have a lot of problems with it. And if the only thing you were ever going to do is bite and blow, if the only thing you were ever going to do is location bugle, I do think there's a bit of an argument to be made. Maybe you don't want to spend a whole lot of time learning how to blow a mouth reed. And in that case, I know Phelps came out with a new bite and blow. Even the Primos one, the Terminator. The problem is like elk, I think, know that one off by heart by now. But that's what I would say. If you're just looking for locating elk, you want to learn how to blow a location bugle. And if you're going to practice, put your shit in your truck, because you're alone. You're not going to embarrass yourself. You can crack a window so you don't blow your eardrums out. But I usually have a couple of different reeds sitting in the console of my truck. And just as I'm driving around, doesn't matter if I'm on a road trip, driving through town, whatever. I put them out in the open so that I see them and I'm like, oh yeah, right. And then I put one in my mouth and I just kind of like make elk noises while I'm driving around. So that's a good way to practice those.
And if you're not picky, you don't have to be perfect. I'm
no
an expert elk hunter, but I've seen elk out there and called them into 20 yards with my shitty
elk sound like shit,
you know, just from practicing.
Yeah. Elk sound weird. Like that's the thing. People are listening to like Corey Jacobson and Jason Phelps, and they're like doing these like perfect, pristine elk calls. And then you get out there and you're like, I don't know what elk sound like that, because elk, one will be really raspy and then one will be really high pitched, and then like, and don't get me wrong, they kill more elk than I probably will ever see. So I'm not saying that they don't know what they're doing, but don't think just because you can't bugle, like I really like your point. I just want to double down on that. Just because you can't bugle, like I'm shit. And when I was in New Mexico, like a blow location, bam, 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 they're just torching off all over the place. It was fantastic. Yeah. And when you get into challenge bugles and other stuff, I would argue it's more about emotion than it is about perfect technicality. Like you're trying to piss someone off. And so it's more about like putting your guts into it than it is, sounding perfect. Quiet gear setup, mostly for elk, but I mean, you got to do a lot of deer hunting as well. Yeah, there you go. Sorry. Somebody in the YouTube's commenting, buddy, I won't lie. My last couple of bulls came in hotter than hell to 2 different biting blows. I'm sure they work, man. You know what I mean? And maybe it's just ego because I always have to like figure out the hard way to do shit. So I wanted to blow a mouth reed. There is like really, really good guys. Like I know a guy, Melvin, who owned, I think it's called Rock Creek Outfitters. Like this dude's guided elk for like 40 years. And he used a Primos Terminator his whole career. And that dude was slaying elk every year. So yeah, 100% you can do it. And Bird Grabber says cow calling can be really helpful. And I'm going to second that. And I would almost say cow calling, I would put number 2 on the list. Like I would actually put challenge bugles at number 3 because most people see themselves having this romantic, like Corey Jacobson, like encounter with elk. And like, there's very few of us that are going to end up in that type of situation. Between location bugles and cow calling, you can figure out where they are and go make a play really specifically. And just very quickly, when I shot my bull in New Mexico, I was challenge bugling with him very directly for like 10 to 15 minutes. Like I was stomping all over him mid bugle. And because he was a solo satellite bull, he had no interest in coming over to fight with me. And then what I did was I pitched cow calls back over my shoulder into the other basin to make it sound like I was on the ridge line, basin, bull, basin, cows, and within 30 seconds of blowing those cow calls, sticks were popping and he was coming in on a rope because he didn't want to fight. He wanted to fuck. And so he wanted those cows. So yeah, I agree, brother. I think cow calling is very, very useful. And I would argue to some degree a more important part of your arsenal. The other reason I think it's important is it's one of those things that you should be doing just as you like walk around. That was the part that I skipped when I said, walk, location bugle. The other thing is like every 2 to 3 minutes, you should just be cow calling a little bit because elk make noise when they walk around. So when you're elk hunting, being quiet isn't really high on your list of priorities. Not getting winded is high on your list of priorities, but elk are used to other animals that make a lot of noise. So if you can walk around sounding like an elk, you're fine. You can go wherever you want and they won't even get spooked. And so, popping a couple cow mews every now and then just makes any elk that are around that you might not be aware of because they do come in silent sometimes, just think you're a cow. So that's another argument for why I think cow calls are such a useful part of your arsenal. Okay, what are your thoughts on quiet gear setups? What do you do? What do you wear? And how important do you think being quiet is?
I think it's very important, especially for archery. Especially for my top layer, I definitely always try and have either a merino base layer or a grid fleece or a regular fleece type over top of that, something real quiet, pants. Like I like Piranha's Ions. They're a little bit on the noisier side. I'm pretty curious about like the Obsidians First Light. I've just heard they're not very durable, right?
Don't even get me started on those bullshit pants.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I don't want to have the same experience. I've heard they're very quiet, but I mean,
They're insanely quiet.
Yeah,
Insanely quiet.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
the piranhas are a little bit noisy, but I haven't had any issues with them in bow range of multiple animals. So
yeah. I think you're right. And for the cost, those piranhas, I love my piranhas iron pants just for like, that's what I wear just like walking around. Like
yeah, exactly.
they're super.
Those things still fit your quads. They're getting tight on mine.
Right now they don't. And I think I was in 36s or yeah. And now I'd probably have to run. I might even have to go all the way to a 40 just to get them to fit my quads. I found one particular style of pant at MEC. I want to say they're called the Mochilero, and they're basically the same as a Zion. They're like a cargo quick dry, but they tend to have a bit boxier of a leg. And so I bought a pair of 38s of those in gray, and they fit so good when I was getting bigger that I just bought a second pair in like that mustard yellow. And I bet you I wear those pants like 95%. Today I walked upstairs and my wife was like, "You're looking skinny." And she was like, "When was the last time you wore those jeans?" And I'm like, "I don't know." Like a year and a half. I don't know. And so I'm just now that I'm down 30 pounds and kind of in the 240 range, starting to fit
into stuff.
Get back into my pants that I used to fit. Because I was a 36 my whole life. Like from the time I've been 25 years old to the time I was 42, I was like a 36 in pants. I've always had big thighs, so I always had to size up a little bit. I was like 36 with a belt. And then once I started getting jacked, it was just like not happening, man.
Yeah.
And then nothing fits you. Like I'm not going to wear a size 40 pant just to fit my quads in them because it was just like they looked retarded, like you big dumpy ass, and it's just like not good at all.
Yeah.
I will say the Sitka Apex line is Is it Apex? Hang on, I'm going to Google this shit. I should know better. Yes. All right.
Early season, that old surplus stuff. It's heavy in the early season.
Yes. Yeah. So Sitka Apex is Sitka's archery hunting merino line. And I've ran it for a while now. I'm not a big fan of the hoodie. The hoodie has a big kangaroo pocket, and I find it's kind of a weird weight of a garment, to be honest with you. And it's like a little too heavy for early season and a little too light for late season. And it's just, I don't think I would highly recommend it. I think if you wanted to run a hoodie, you're better off with the heavyweight, with the core heavyweight, grid fleece. But the Sitka Apex pants are a merino pant, but like in a grid fleece configuration, if that makes any sense. Like they're grid fleece on the inside and then merino on the outside, but they're not terribly hot. So you can wear them early season. And I've beat the shit out of those things. And they've shown zero sign of wear. They're actually the first pant that I wore that actually came, other than a pair of Kuiu pants I had way back in the day that came with built-in knee pads. But the built-in knee pads and the Kuiu stuff back then were like really thin. It was actually more just like heavy reinforcement. Whereas the knee pads and the Sitka stuff, they're like legitimate knee pads that you can slide in and out. And when I first got them in,
was the Timberlines?
I think so. I don't know how thick the knee pads are in the Tiburons.
Yeah.
How thick are they?
They're decent, like half inch.
Yeah, okay. And do they slide out?
Yep.
And they're like little foam jobbies?
Yeah. It's got to be the same.
They're probably pretty similar.
Yeah.
And I thought I would hate them. To me, that is like the one thing that not nearly enough people are wearing. And it's the one thing I will never not wear again. Like for me now, knee pads in my hunting pants are almost a must, unless I'm like winter hunting in rain gear or something like that. Like I love, have you worn pants with knee pads? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I love the knee pads and the Timberlines.
Yes.
Those are just hot pants, you know. So I might have to look into those for spring and early season.
And I would a pant you might, and you can try some on next time you're over here. I really like the mountain pant for an all around. The Timberlines I couldn't wear. I had to sell mine. They were too heavy, and they have a really weird fit. Like I find they were very tight through the seat, even when I upsized all the way to a 40, and they just didn't fit me right. I didn't like where the rest of the Sitka pants fit me really nice. I think Kuya were meant for a little like tall, lean guys. And the Sitka seem to be built a little bit more for the athletic, muscular guys. And I loved the way most Sitka pants fit me, but not those Timberlines. And then the only other ones that I'm kind of thinking about, they also start. Hang on, I'm on the site right now. I'll go look them up. Ascent pants. There's really two schools of thought when it comes to pants for sheep hunting. The mountain pant would be one school of thought where you kind of wear an all purpose, no matter what happens, you're going to be good to go pant. And you might be a little bit hot if it stays cool. You might be a little bit hot if it stays warm. And the drawback is they might stay a little wet once they get wet. Or you go with an ultralight pant like the Ascent pant and probably have to bring long johns. And then you might be a little bit cool if it gets cooler, but at least you'll dry quicker if it, but you also get wet quicker. Like if you're just walking in light dew, you're going to get soaking wet in the Ascents, where the mountain pants are DWR finished. So they're going to stay drier longer. And I ran the mountain pants last year and liked them quite a bit. And I think when you're stone sheep hunting in August, like it's not unreasonable at all for it to snow or sleet or do really terrible things. So I'm 80% convinced I'm going to run the mountain pant again, but I may run the Ascent pant just for the experience, so I can comment on the quality or like the, so I can actually like do a review. What pants are you running right now for your main hunting?
Generally either Prana Zions, the Sitka Timberlines.
Yeah.
That's pretty much my go-tos.
Yeah.
Either hot or cooler.
Yeah.
And then with the Pranas, usually I'll go with the zip off, the first light zip off base layers underneath. And I find that to be a pretty good combo. Gaiters, if it's going to be, like you said, like dewy grass, because that's the only the real downside, right? You're going to wet out the bottoms real quick in dewy grass, but throw some gaiters on, you're golden.
I've gone back to being a 100% gaiter guy. From being a 100% gaiter guy to being a 0% gaiter guy, and I'm back to being a 100% gaiter guy.
Yeah.
Are you Outdoor Research Crocs?
I got the First Light, the heavy ones.
Okay.
I forget what they're called, but
okay. And you like them?
Yeah. I got no issues with them.
Good. I went back to those Outdoor Research. I ran the Sitka for a little while, but I found them a little bit short.
Yeah.
I like and I'm just not a huge fan of one of the particular buckle systems. So I went back to the Outdoor Research Crocs, and I've been very happy. I just find they're just so bomb proof. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have you run any Stone Glacier stuff?
Yeah, I've heard good things.
What do you run for Puffy Layer? Because this guy's asking about a Stone Glacier Puffy.
No, I haven't. So for Puffy Layer, I run First Light Uncompahgre and a just an Eddie Bauer down vest underneath, and then I've got that Swazi hood. I love that thing, man. I wear that every day.
I want to get one of those. They're pretty nice.
Do it, man.
I do have the Puffy Layer from Stone Glacier. I've got the pants and the jacket. And here's what I'll say, because I have an ungodly amount of Puffy Layers in my closet right now. Like I've got purebred, I've got hybrid, I've got lightweight, I've got heavyweight. I am spoiled, to say the least. And here's what I'm going to say about Puffy Layers, because I think every company has their own benefits and highlights a certain element of a puffy layer. I think for the warmth to weight ratio, like if you want the lightest possible, warmest possible setup, I think Stone Glacier wins that race. Just based on the amount of fill, the type of fill, and how much the end weight of the jacket is. Now, their shells are a little bit more fragile than most of the other shells, but they're also notably lighter weight. So there's no free lunch in this game. Like when you start to get lighter, things start to get weaker. And so you're not going to use a Stone Glacier puffy jacket for like everyday use when you're not hunting. Whereas you could throw on the Uncompahgre, you could throw on my Sitka Calvin light down jacket, and you wear that all winter if you want it, just as like a jacket, and you're not going to break it. You know what I mean? Whereas the Stone Glacier one, I tried to do that, and it's like just having your keys in your pocket every day for a couple weeks really starts to break down. I guess it's just a hyperlight sil nylon. But again, and it's pure down. And I really find myself moving more towards hybrid insulation layers now. I'm not even sure I'm sold on like pure synthetic, but I like the idea of a synthetic down blend that gives you the kind of warmth to weight ratio of down, but it also protects you. It's not completely vulnerable to moisture related issues like most down products are. So I don't take my Stone Glacier as much as I used to, but I don't think you can go wrong. I think Stone Glacier makes super nice shit. None of it has ever broken on me. All of it has lived up to its expectations. I wouldn't say that the hydrophobic down they use is any better or any worse than anyone else's. It's not perfect. Like if you get it, even getting it like wet from sweat will knock down its R value, and it will take a while to dry that down out. I've talked a lot about this before. I never take my layers off until my body heat has dried them out. People make a big mistake that they think taking their kind of wet down jacket off and like hanging it on a bush while everything air dries, unless you're actually somewhere where it's legitimately hot, the moisture isn't going to go anywhere because the ambient temperature is so cold. The best strategy to dry out your clothing while hunting is to wear it. And that means wear it all night when you're in camp, while you're eating, while you're hanging out. And then if it's still not dry, you get in your sleeping bag in. And then maybe, midnight, 2:00, you wake up and it is dry, and then you take it off. I like your tips for puffy stuff too, though. Like, I don't think you always got to run name brand shit. I think and I like to tell people, especially this time of year, especially in Canada, you hop on that Last Hunt website where they sell all the mountaineering gear. Holy shit, man. You get some stellar deals. I got my SWAT shoes on there for like $6. Yeah. That place is a gold mine of deals. Yeah. And it's not going to be camo, and it's not, but who cares, man? You know what I mean? Like, you're not stalking an animal in your puffy jacket.
Yeah.
All right. This is interesting. I want to hear your take on this. Tactics to hunting new burns and last year's fire areas. Are you a big burn guy?
I love burns.
So I think this is a bit of a trick question, but I want to hear your take on it. What do you think about hunting last year's burns?
I would say last year's burns could definitely be productive already. Okay. Yeah, it's not necessarily that they're going to be, depending on the severity of the fire, right? If it's a light fire, though, it could definitely be bears in there this year. I was asked recently how long burns are productive for, after a burn, like how many, 1, 2, 3 years, when is it going to start tapering off the activity? I've found burns to be productive for 15 plus years. It's just the visibility is going to suck after a while, when stuff starts to grow back up, right? But they tend to be bear magnets for quite a while. So within a year, I mean, like, you're just going to have to find the food source hotspots in that burn, typically south slopes, right? Whatever melts up first, that's going to be the area to target. It's going to be a bear magnet. Essentially, that's going to be a buffet for bears on that hillside. So, and you're basically going to see that by shit everywhere, right? And when you're seeing scat piles everywhere and nipped grass, look at the grass so you can see where it's been bitten. If you're seeing that in an area, that's a good area to hunt, depending on how the burn is. If it's super open, or if you have an ambush possibility, a lot of variables when it comes to that. But basically, bears, you're always just hunting the food source. Burns just provide nice food sources. They're typically more open, more sunlight coming in. So yeah, I would definitely say last year's burns could be productive. Just find a food source in there and see if there's shit there. And if there is, then there's bears there. Kill a bear.
Do you find there's a difference, or do you have a preference for the fringe to the interior? Like, do you hunt the edges? Or are you going right through them? What's your strategy in that regard?
I've run into bears like cruising the timber on the outskirts of the burns. I think they'll definitely like bed up in there and hang out in there, in the burn itself, in the open areas. That's typically just feeding areas. They're coming out to feed there. Typically, I don't actually hunt the feeding areas as much as the transition areas, and areas that they're just going to be walking around in there, getting from point A to point B, try and intercept them. Like the one burn that I hunt particularly, there's just an old fire road that goes up and weaves its way through it. It'd be much quicker for me to just bomb right up through the burn to get to the top. But I tend to cruise that fire road and, just still hunt it essentially, stop and listen. They might not be walking the fire road. They might not be 15 yards off into the brush, but you're going to hear a bear. They're like elk, right? They're not trying to be quiet typically. And just like elk, you don't necessarily have to be as quiet either, especially with mature bears. I mean, if I scare a bear off by making a couple footsteps, that's not really a bear I want to shoot. But an older, mature bear, he's not going to be scared off by a couple footsteps coming up the road. If anything, he might be curious and poke his head out. But I mean, yeah, I'm typically just trying to move around as much as I can in there at hot times of day. And if I see an area of interest, I'll spend more time in that area for sure. But the more time you can spend in that burn, obviously you don't want to be drifting your scent all around carelessly, right? But I mean, that's why road hunters can be very successful killing bears, because they're just moving so much throughout the day, right? If you station up in one spot on 10 piles of shit, that bear might come back that evening. He might not, so you're kind of rolling the dice, sitting in an ambush position. I've had better luck just moving around, maybe doing some blind calling here and there. That's a powerful weapon with bears, You do have to be aware of where you are, right? Don't do it in a super grizzly rich area, right? And it's funny because where I hunt, like, there are definitely grizzlies around, but I have found, like, I haven't even got one on camera in that burn, and I've talked to somebody else, and he said basically one mountain over, there's like a cut block where you would always see grizzlies in there, but for whatever reason, I don't see grizzlies in this burn particularly. I don't get them on camera in there. Not to say that they're not in there ever, but I mean, I've found that seems to be a little bit segregated there. So I feel a bit more comfortable blind calling in that area, at least if I get my face chewed off. I guess I blew it.
Yeah, man. I agree with all of that. I'm going to add a couple notes that Shoe Swap put in the YouTube channel because they kind of align with my theories as well. And in his experience, he finds they're best after 3 to 4 years and then are good for the next 20 years. And he makes another highlight that 3 to 4 years, not necessarily because that's how long it takes for the food, but that's how long it takes for the population to catch up to the extra food. So I think one of the reasons you're having success in early burns in transition areas is that there's not necessarily more bears yet. It's that the bears are being called in to this new food source. So it's like you just have a hot,
for the bears to learn like this is a food source at this time of year, because bears are smart like that. They know, they don't have a calendar, but they know when stuff is shooting up out of the ground, where on the mountain, right? So I mean, that's a memory thing. They'll come back year after year to that same spot, and they might not hang out there all year. They might transition up the mountain and follow the food sources, but they'll remember that spot for sure. But I think it does take a couple years for them to really learn, oh, this is a prime food source. That's why I said after a year potentially could, I mean, the feed is going to be better after a year, but I mean, as the years go by, more and more bears are going to learn that that's a good spot. The area is going to be able to sustain more bears. Exactly. And like he said, up to 20 years. I mean, I fully agree with that. But the thing you're going to run into is visibility. And for bow hunting, that can work for you because, in the spot that I hunt, by the time you see them, you're within 30 yards typically, but that can get sketchy. Yeah. So
I think more than visibility is actual physical capability. Like they end up getting so thick, you're just not going to walk around in them. At some point, they're going to become this choked hellhole until the upper canopy closes. And you start to get that successional die off and then it starts to open back up again around the 30, 40 year kind of mark. But then at that point, you're not going to have the ground feed that you had during that first. So for me, I would say from like year 3 to 4 to year 15, if somebody said like, what are your like gold standards for a burn? That's what I'm shooting for. Now, can they be productive for a couple of years before that and a few years after that? 100%. But I would agree for all the reasons that you and Shoe Swap shared, that I would agree with those as well. That, right from the first year, you could definitely be seeing more traffic all the way to 20, no problem. Jeremy wants me to, I was going to talk about this, so this is a good thing. Before we finish tonight, Jay, what bow did you buy and your setup? So I ended up buying a Hoyt RX-7 Ultra, and between us, I was really set on the Matthews V3X33. Like I had my sight picked out, I had the quiver picked out. Like I just thought that was going to be the bow for me. And I'm going to make a comment here about buying a bow. It's a lot different even than buying a gun. Like, I'm sorry, it's just not, a gun is not as personal. Now, maybe if you're one of those mile plus guys and you're doing like hyper customized everything, that's not my wheelhouse. So I'm not going to comment on something that's out of my pay grade. But I've bought a lot of guns without pre-shooting them, and I've always been able to get relatively comfortable relatively quick. This is the first time that I've ever had the opportunity to shoot multiple bows just at will. Just like drop 3 arrows with that one, set it down, have a break, have a sip of coffee, shoot this one for 5 minutes, go chat, shoot another one for 5. Oh, I kind of like that. Go back to this one. Oh, wait, let's extend my draw length half an inch and try these again, and go back and feel no pressure, have all the flagship bows there at my disposal to shoot. And I will tell you this, I will never buy a bow a different way ever again. I don't care where I got to go. I don't care what I got to do. Every time I buy a new bow, I will go do the same thing because it was incomparable. And I would really recommend it to other people. And I really want to like call out local bow shops to like get their shit together. And this is a reasonable thing to offer your clientele. If you don't have the ability to have a handful of demo bows in stock so people can shoot some bows, I'm calling you out. That's bullshit. Get it together. Get some demo bows.
Don't forget about the lefties either.
Sure. Yes. 100%, man. 100%. Yep.
Never been able to try a bow out before purchase.
And neither have I. And here's what happened. The RX-7 fit substantially better than anything else. Like, it wasn't like, here's the weird thing. When you get up, the main three I was comparing was the Prime Inline 3, the Matthews V3X33, and the Hoyt RX-7 Ultra. When I went down there, I thought my draw length was 29.5 inches. Turns out it's 30 inches. So all the bows were set up to to 29 and a half. And I knew I had the money to afford a flagship bow. So I wasn't going to piss around with like, you know, the Vertex and the Highline and these other, you know, any of the other like second tier bows. So it simplified the process. And what happened was I got down to the Hoyt and the Matthews. The Prime was nice and everything, but Prime just aren't as well as supported. And I knew when I got home here, nobody even really carries Prime, where if I had to go get a new Hoyt string, maybe somebody would have an RX-7 string in stock. Or if I broke up, you know, before I've broke a cable stop on one of my cams, and I was able to go into, what's the one you go to all the time? Foreman's. And they didn't have any in stock, but they were good enough to take one off the bow on the shelf. And they said, we'll just order one in and put it back on there in a week. Nobody's going to buy that thing in the next week anyways. And that's it's like why you shoot a 300 Win Mag or an equally acceptable round. It's like sticking with something that's a little more mainstream provides more options. And so the Prime was nice enough, but it wasn't on my hit list. And I was down to the Hoyt and the Matthews. And I don't know how I can explain this, but it was the framing of the peep and the sight. So every time I drew back the Matthews, like the draw cycles on both were beautiful. Both were completely dead in hand. Both were weighted beautifully. Both have the new inline system. So they've taken all the accessories that used to be a couple of inches out, and they moved them all right to the center of the bow. So the Hoyts have the Picatinny rail attachment for the sights, and the Matthews has the inline sight, the bridge lock that actually goes through the riser with a dovetail. So the amount, like every time I pulled it back, it was like level, bam, level, bam, level. Like no cork, no twist, no nothing. Crazy nice, both of them. But every time I drew back the Matthews, I was having to like search for my peep. You know what I mean? Like I'd have to get my nose just right, and then I'd have to move the bow a little bit, and then I'd be able to get, and it, like for most people, it was tolerable. Don't get me wrong. And it's probably about how good my Pro Defiant is right now. Like it takes a little bit to settle in. But with that RX-7, man, holy shit. Every time, drawback, anchor, drop my cheek, nose to string, boom. Like I'm looking through a fucking tunnel. Like it was magical. Like that scope ring was perfectly housed within that peep every single time. And part of that is the RX-7 actually has, at full draw, an axle to axle length that's 1.5 inches longer than the Matthews because of the additional reflex on the Matthews. And so what that does is changes the string angle. And because I have such a long draw, that's a really big deal back there. So the Matthews is a shallower string angle because the axle to axle is shorter, which means I have to come forward in order to drop my nose onto the string and line up the peep and the sight. Whereas the Hoyt has a steeper angle because the axle to axle is farther apart. And so at full draw, the string is actually closer to my face. And of course, Kellen's breaking all this shit down for me real time while I'm trying these bows out. Like it's just a dream experience. You know what I mean? And so, yeah. And like, here's the thing, the Hoyt's $600 more. And I'll tell you this, if I was on a tight budget, I either would have shot the Hoyt aluminum or I would have just went with the Matthews, because even the little difference in the peep framing, if I was on a tight budget, it wasn't a deal breaker for me. Like I could have shot that Matthews all day. But I've been saving up for this for a while. I haven't bought a new bow in almost 5 years. It was like, listen, if I'm going to buy a bow, I don't care what it costs. I want to buy the one that fits me perfectly. So it was a luxurious purchase, and it was a little bit over the top. Like I'm not there. You can't say it wasn't, you know what I mean? Like there's no other bow there's no other hunting bow that's even in that price range. Like most of the flagship bows are like $1,200 USD, and then you have this $1,800 USD Hoyt. But here's the other thing that I will say about the RX-7 Ultra. All these bows look nice, Like every single one of them, when you're looking at them, they're beautiful. But when you see them all stacked up against each other, that RX-7 Ultra, man, it's like it's poured out of liquid or something. Like it's just so beautiful. The curves on it and the shape on it, like it really leapt out at me. And somebody asked me about my new gun purchase. It was like, why did you buy that particular gun? Like you could have got away with a Tika for $1,000. And I said, because it excited me. Like I'm joyous when I pick up that gun because it's beautiful. Like if you think there's not an aesthetic experience to the materials and the items that we, involve ourselves with on a daily basis, I think you're mistaken. And if you're lucky enough to like have a little bit of a disposable income, I think that should be part of your criteria. Like you should look at it and be excited to hold it. And I will say that those are the two big reasons: the just pure raw sex appeal of the Hoyt carbon. And then, because it's not even that much lighter. It's like a couple ounces. Like it's really quite shocking. Like I almost think it's like carbon filled with aluminum, because even in your hands, like it's a little bit lighter, but it's not $600 lighter. That's for sure. You know what I mean? And then to wrap that up, I put on a black gold Pro Sight 5-pin slider with the Picatinny rail attachment, the Hoyt inline quiver that mounts flush to the bow, a Hamsky Epsilon rest, a Spider 8-inch or 10-inch front stabilizer, and upgraded gas camo ghost strings. So that's the full bow setup.
You got a name for it yet?
Ghostface Killer.
There you go.
Yeah,
I like it.
I was driving home, and because the ghost strings, like I was texting to somebody the list of things that were on it, and I finished with the camo ghost strings. And then they said, do you have any names for it? And I was like, Ghostface Killer just came. My last bow's name was Death Dealer. And because he was like murked out, like just black on black. And this one, I got that wilderness color, which is kind of like a dark green. And then I've got the camo strings. So it's kind of like a bush ghost. So yeah, Ghostface Killer.
Nice.
So there's my bow. We're going to get late, but there's one more question I want to get into, and then I'll save the rest for next week. Plus, it gives me anxiety when I don't have any questions to start the next week with, because I'm always thinking nobody's going to ask me any new questions, which doesn't ever happen, but I'm nervous about that. And I want to ask this to you first. What was/is the driving reason to record your hunts? That's a lot of extra weight to bring.
Yeah, it definitely is. And like, I'm an animated storyteller. I can tell stories about my hunts all day, but I mean, it just never does them justice, Yeah. And always, it never fails. I'll tell somebody, about my hunt or whatever, and then like later I'm thinking about what I told them, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even tell them, like, 2 or 3 of the best parts of the hunt, because in the excitement, you just forget about whatever, small details, but they kind of make the story sometimes, or you tell the story the way my mind works. I tell stories, all over the place. And then I realize, oh, I forgot, this piece of the puzzle, and that's a crucial piece, So, I mean, at least when I've got some film, that's the hard part though, is trying to think of what all you need to tell a story, and trying to film that all while you're out there. Cause I will always go to edit something and it's like, I wish I had filmed this out there. Cause I mean, that would be perfect for right here. Now I got to figure out something to fill this in and tell the story still. But I mean, the challenges makes it easier to tell the story. It's more challenging in some ways, but for me, it makes it easier to tell the story, and I always, whenever I get back, I always have friends and family asking, so how was it? Tell me about your hunt or whatever. It's easier to just show them sometimes, right?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with all of the above, and a little bit more like, I just found the like verbal narrative paled a little bit, like it fell short, especially with some of my backcountry adventures. Like I don't know how to describe this to you. And that leads into the second reason why I did it. And maybe I'm just egotistical, but I was looking at other people doing it and I was like, I can do this better. Like this needs to be done better.
That's a big motivator.
I don't like the way that these guys, it's not that I don't like it, but I don't believe these guys are telling a story in a way that I feel is authentic to the experience I'm having. Like the whole highlight reel. And I get this. My hunt films are not for everybody. I'm trying for more of like a cinema verite documentary style approach with my stuff. Like I don't care how long it ends up being. Tons of my hunts, I have a hunt where I didn't even kill a goat and it's an hour long. And I had a dude post on Rockslide. He's like, well, it would have been nice to know at the beginning of the hour that you didn't kill a goat. So I didn't have to spend a whole hour watching you not kill a goat. And I'm like, I kind of wanted to say, well, bro, if it's not in the thumbnail, like, do you need to be a rocket scientist? Like, trust me, if I killed the fucking goat, the goat would be the first thing that you saw in the thumbnail. Like, but I get so many more comments from people that say exactly what I'm hoping, and is that you have a way of showcasing these hunts that takes me there with you. Like, I can feel what it's like, and I don't care that it's not. I don't like the highlight reel hunts, you know, that ends up being 12 minutes long or 21 minutes long or whatever's supposed to best fit the algorithm. Like, I want to show the monotony. I want to show when it gets mundane. I want to show when I keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and nothing's happening. And I think that's like really important for my style anyways, to convey what it is I'm trying to convey.
Yeah, I think you do a good job of that.
Thanks, man. I try. And I concur. Like, I know when I go to do my sheep hunt this year, I'll be a bit rusty again. And that's the other reason why I like doing some spring bear, is because normally I haven't filmed anything in 6 months. And I forget the daily stuff I need to do so that when I get home, I've got the footage. You always should be filming more than you are. Like, if you're ever at doubt, just start filming.
Yeah.
You never have enough B-roll. You never have enough transition footage. You never have enough footage to like get you from like one area to another in the story. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And then you end up just popping up someplace and having to do like a voiceover or whatever to recenter the audience. And it's like, well, that was cheap. You know what I mean? Like, and so that's the one thing I've learned, is that the shit that you think is boring is the shit you need to shoot more of, because that's the glue you're going to be able to use to like hold your story together. And I'm not going to lie, man, I liked the challenge.
Yeah.
Like, I like knowing there are not many dudes that do the solo hunts I do and film them solo. Like, I wear that with pride. It's a very difficult thing to do, just physically, like just being able to carry all that shit, remembering it all. I like the technical knowledge that you need. Like most people, so you got to do all the hunting stuff. Now I got to know all the camera stuff as well. I like that.
And not just know it, but keep in your mind too. Like, you know, like I'm trying, you know, I'm actively hunting right now, but I'm also trying to be a filmmaker, you know, like that's tough. Those are two tough things in and of themselves, but to put them
100%.
Together, that's an extra challenge.
Yeah. And I think that's why, like, that whole Gary V thing, document, don't create, it's a slogan that he's always saying. And the reason he's saying it is that when we try to create, we overcomplicate things. And I think that was the one sentiment that kind of saved me a little bit, because I was a bit frozen. I was like, I don't know how I'm supposed to be like a filmmaker and a hunter at the same time. But then when I thought about it, and I'm still doing the same thing. It's more of a mental trick than anything. And it was like, well, just document, don't create. So just be a hunter and just document hunting. But the little things like understanding the rule of thirds and what composition, like, you still need to know how to take nice footage and, you know, how to best adapt to different lighting scenarios. Like, I've been doing this so long now, man, I don't even know how much I take for granted. Like,
a lot of it is second nature.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like, even my familiarity with my camera, like, I could be filming in, like, doesn't matter. Like, I know how to adapt to whatever's going on, and I can have my camera set up in half a second.
Yeah.
And I'm filming, and I probably take that for granted, because that probably took a while for me to get there. It was probably a lot of like fucking around the first few years.
That's part of why I haven't upgraded my camera system, is I know there's that nightmare of, you know, trying to readapt and get used to a whole new system. Yeah,
they changed all the Sony menus between my last camera and this camera, and I was like, Jesus Christ, man. now I got to like learn where all the buttons are and all the dials are. Like it's a better system. So it was like, it's kind of like when I switched to a hinge. It's like, this sucks, but it's going to be worth it in the long run. I kind of felt that way about.
You're going to suck before you get better.
Yeah. And I'll close out with one more little piece that I think me and you have actually talked about. When you get home from a hunt, typically there's this like kind of postpartum depression, especially if it was a backcountry or a camping hunt, because you had the solitude, you had the isolation, you had the wilderness, and it's a really great, pure, simple experience. And then you're kind of thrust back into society and you don't really have any choice about it. And it takes a few days to like get your head on straight. And I used to be really depressed when I got home, and being able to have an SD card full of pictures to edit and a film to put together, it's cathartic, man. Yeah. Like, because I'm back in it, and I'll even normally keep a couple days of my schedule at work, like really, really light that first week, because I just can't handle going back in full force. And I'll give myself a few hours a day during the workday to start my editing and cataloging and organizing and all that kind of stuff. And it really helped my mind. It really does. And you don't have to go crazy. I think you could achieve the same thing by making photography part of your hunting experience. And you could get a way cheaper camera. You could carry way less gear, but you would still get that psychological benefit at the end of coming home to this like little pile of memories to like work with. And the other thing is, like, I've got a 6-year-old, you've got your boy. I want her to be able to watch my hunts when she gets older, and being able to share those with her is something that's really important to me. And I'm glad I can do that now because I've recorded some of my hunts.
Yeah, some of those hunts that me and my son have been on that I documented, like those are family videos now for the rest of his life.
Like, how badass is that, awesome, man? Experience. You know what I mean? Like, it's not him in the backyard in a sprinkler. You know what I mean? It's you guys bear hunting together.
Yeah. That's the stuff awesome. That sticks with me. And I know some of those memories, for him, like at the time, it's type 2 fun, right? Like, I mean, at the time it's tough and you're grinding through it, but I mean, he has such fond memories of some of that stuff now. It's stuff that you don't get doing stuff that's fun, but it's city fun, right? That's what I call it. It's a different kind, type 1 100%. Fun. Yeah.
All right, man, it's getting late. We both got to work tomorrow. Anything you want to close out on? Anything you want to share, notes you want to make?
I don't think so, man.
All right. If anybody wants to follow Simon, and y'all should, even though he probably doesn't care, it's Backcountry Bloodline, one of the coolest Instagram handles going. I'm a little resentful that I didn't come up with something equally cool. Hopefully Simon will. Does this time normally work for you?
Yeah.
We'll get you back on here. I'm finding people are liking these better when it's a couple of us answering questions instead of me just like ranting incessantly, which is like, shocking. Somebody doesn't want to hear you talk for an hour straight. So we'll get you back on, man. I always really appreciate your insights.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. For everybody else, if you could take a moment and engage with the platform, like, comment, share, subscribe, all that shit helps get the content up the algorithm and helps the podcast grow. And as always, thanks for tuning in. All right. Catch you later, Simon.
Have a good